Alright, stand still. Don't move. Don't move. Don't move your body. Don't move your body. Stand still means don't move your body. Past. Walk past. Izzy, walk past me. Oh golly. That's why buttons fall off.
Hi crafty people! Kids are so rough on their clothes and I'm constantly needing to mend and alter my kids' clothes to make them work for them. Especially when I get hand-me-downs that have had a little bit of extra wear, they usually need that little bit of extra love as well. Today I thought I'd share with you 3 of the main ways I fix and alter my kids' clothing. If you've never been here before, then welcome. My name's Marie and this channel is all about motivating mums to make and mend. I really think mending clothes is a great way to go. Clothes weren't meant to be disposable, and I really think it's important that if we can give clothes a second life by just giving them that little bit of fixing that they need to keep being used. Today, we're going to be fixing 3 items of clothing, so I'll show them to you now. First, we have this little dress that my 9-month-old wears that usually has a button here on this strap, and it needs to be sewn back on again. Second, we have this pair of leggings that my 2-year-old wears, and she's worn a hole in the knee because she's 2 and that's what 2-year-olds are best at. The last project we're doing today is to hem these pants that my son can't currently wear because they're too long for him. I hope you enjoy this video as you're watching it, and let's get mending.
My mum fixes clothes.
To sew on a button, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have a button that matches any that are already existing on your garment. So in this case, I've saved the original button, but if you've lost it, you might need to head to a craft shop to find a matching button. Next, I'm going to thread my needle with the same thread that is already on these sort of buttons already attached. So in this case, these buttons are sewed on with white cotton, so I'm going to do the same. So I'll thread my needle with some white cotton and move you closer so you can see what I do next.
First, check the position of your button and the direction of your stitches. In this case, the stitches are going from top to bottom, not left to right. Then I insert my needle in the back of my garment to make sure the knot is at the back and won't be visible. And the needle has come out where I want one of the button holes to go. Now I thread my button onto the needle so that it is positioned in the correct spot. And then holding it firmly, I alternate going in through the top and then down through the bottom hole. I make sure to go through both sides, going top to bottom on the left and top to bottom on the right. One last note about positioning the button before you're sewing it. If you have a buttonhole, make sure that you are lining up the button inside the buttonhole, marking where the button is positioned and then sewing your button on. If you're wondering how I'm not spiking my fingers, I'm holding it like this with my fingers. That way I can tell that where my thumb and finger are meeting is where the buttonholes are. So essentially, I'm just pushing the needle against my fingertip at the back to know that it's positioned correctly where the hole will be. That makes it easier for threading my needle in through the back without looking. Now I can tie off my thread by picking up some of the back and threading my needle through that loop that it's creating on the back. I need to have made sure that I've done lots of stitches to hold the button in place before tying it off to make sure it's nice and tight, and also tying my knot off tightly as well to make sure the button stays securely on the garment. Cut off your excess and you're done. Now let's try it on her and see how it looks.
We are going to be mending this hole here in the knee of my daughter's leggings. So in order to do that, I'm going to thread a hand sewing needle with a colour cotton that matches the colour of these leggings. And then I'm going to have them inside out so that I can see the back of the hole ready to sew it. I'll move you closer so you can see what I'm doing.
The fabric around the outside of a hole is always very thin and flimsy. So the first thing we're going to do is sew some stitches around the outside of the hole to reinforce it, to make sure that it's nice and strong before we sew it together again. As always, I want to make sure that the knot is at the back of the leggings, and in this case the leggings are inside out, so the knot is on this top side here. I'm going to go all the way around the hole, doing a bit of a loop, going in through part of the fabric and then in through the hole so that it loops around the outside of the hole. Doing this will reinforce the edge of the hole, and I'll also be able to use it to gather the hole together in order to reduce the size of the hole in a second. You'll notice that as I'm sewing, I've got one of my hands inside the leggings, and that's so that I don't end up sewing it closed to the front of the leggings as well. As I pull that gathering stitch, it makes the hole smaller, and then I'm going to put my hand back inside the leggings again and poke any of the fluffy side through to the back so that it's not shown on the front side. Then I can close the hole over by sewing just a simple stitch through the top piece of fabric and then through the bottom. So through the top half of the hole, then through the bottom, and pulling it tight to make the hole close over. No hole is ever going to be completely invisible, especially because in this case quite a fair bit of fabric had been taken away through having a lot of grazed knees. But our aim here is just to reduce the visibility of the hole and to reinforce the fabric a bit so that it's less prone to having more holes be put in later. Once I've gone all the way down the edge of the hole, I flip it back in the right way to check how it looks, and if I'm happy with it, I'm ready to then tie off the end of my thread. To do that, I pick up a tiny bit of fabric in a part that won't be visible and make a loop, and then I thread my cotton through the loop a couple of times, pulling it tight to make a few knots. Then we can cut off the excess thread, turn them in the right way again, and they're all done. Now we're ready to try them on and see how they look.
We are going to be hemming these pants for my son. The first step for this is to try the pants on and see how much of a hem we need to take up. So when I tried these on my son, I cuffed the bottom as he was wearing them so that I could see how much I needed to take up. And in this case it was 6 centimeters, which is about 2 inches. I cuffed them while they were on his leg, then I used my tape measure to measure how big of a cuff it was, and then I took them off him without using pins because I didn't want to spike his little legs. It is possible to just go around on your sewing machine and do a straight stitch on the bottom to be able to hem pants nice and quickly, and that's usually my preference because I usually do any option other than hand sewing. But the reason I am hand sewing this hem today is because I do want to eventually be able to take them down when he's taller, but in order to do that without leaving little needle marks all the way around, I'd prefer to hand sew it. If I do sew it on my machine, those needle marks will be visible once I pull it out again, and it's just not a very good look. So instead, I'm going to hand sew this, take one for the team and doing the tedious task, and it'll look a lot nicer in the end. I need to stop fiddling. It's a bit distracting. So we're all ready to start hemming these pants. I'll move you closer so you can see exactly what I'm doing.
I have my pants inside out so that as I turn this cuff up, the cuff is going to be on the inside of the leg of the pants. I'm going to use my tape measure to measure that the cuff is 6 centimeters in length, or you can measure however long your cuff needs to be. I'm matching the seam on the cuff to the seam on the leg of the pants and measuring the 6 centimeters and using a pin to hold it in place. Then I'm going to flip the leg of the pants to the other side so that I can match the seams up on this side. Do the same thing, put a pin in place, and then measure various other points around the cuff just to make sure that it's nice and secure before you start sewing. I have my needle ready to go, all threaded with a colour cotton that matches the colour of these pants, and I've tied a knot in the end. To start sewing, I insert my needle here where the seam is so that my knot will be hidden in the seam, and I'm going to be doing a slip stitch around this hem. To do a slip stitch, I'm going to pick up the smallest piece of fabric that I can on the back of the pants, and then I'm going to do a little stitch there, and then parallel to that, do a longer stitch through the edge of the hem. Then I'm going to do it again, do a tiny little stitch through the back of the pants, And then parallel to that, do a longer stitch through the bottom of the hem. As I'm sewing around, I can take the pins out as I'm going, and I'm going to sew this slip stitch the whole way around the leg of the pants and get back to the beginning again to tie it off. If you're interested in more specific details about how to do a slip stitch, you can watch my video from last week all about the most useful hand sewing techniques, and I covered a slip stitch in that video. Don't worry, I've spared you from having to watch me do it the entire way around the bottom of the leg. We are back here at the beginning again, and I'm ready to tie off my thread because I have finished doing my stitching. So to tie off my stitching, I am pulling through a little loop and pushing my cotton through that loop to make a knot, pulling it tight to make sure that my stitches are in place. I cut off the excess of my thread, and I can turn the pants in the right way so I can see how they look. I hem the first pant leg off camera, so they're all ready to go. I spared you from having to watch me do that twice because, oh my goodness, it was long and tedious, and I need a cup of tea. Let's try them on and see how they look.
So there you have it. I hope this has been helpful for you in learning how to mend your kids' clothing. If it has been, don't forget to leave a like down below. And also leave a comment telling me what's the most common thing that needs to be fixed at your house. For us, it's definitely holes in clothing. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel down below by clicking that red subscribe button, and that will bring you back here again next week to watch my next video. Next week, we're going to be making some bunting decoration for this back walls to make my filming space and my sewing area just that little bit more interesting. So if you'd like to come back and see that video, make sure you're subscribed. Until next time, get creative, and I'll see you later.